The Path of the Horse, From Competition to Compassion, by Stormy May. Read by the author. Dedication. To Justin. You showed me how to live my dreams by showing me something bigger. Author's Note, April 2012. I loved hanging out with horses. I loved feeding them grass and oats and carrots and apples. I loved smelling their warm breath and touching their tender noses. I loved hearing them run in a field. I loved watching them moving together, fast and slow. I loved watching them drink and play and rest in the sun. I loved the challenge of learning how to connect with even the most skittish by enticing them with food or engaging their innate curiosity and leading them into a good scratching and grooming session involving my fingers and their lips. I loved horseback riding. I loved the balance, the harmony, the grace of human and horse bodies merging in time and space. I loved the feeling of moving together while participating in dressage, trail riding, gymkhana, show jumping, eventing, polo, and fox hunting, the modern-day equivalents of the ancient practices of training for battle, transportation, farm work, and recreation for high society. I loved the physical feeling of galloping, jumping, prancing, and walking down countless trails on horseback. I loved the mental challenge of teaching children and adults how to navigate on their mounts. I loved showing horses how to relax and be okay with what humans were doing to them. I thought I was making the world a better place, one horse and rider at a time. There were some parts I didn't like. I didn't like that I needed corrals and halters and bridles to control the horses. I didn't like that I had to continue pushing a horse and myself physically in order to be competitive, or simply work through the hundreds of tiny disobediences occurring in everyday riding. I didn't like the way the relationship between the horses and myself felt after I showed them, through physical means, who was in charge. I saw as a horse trainer I'd gotten close enough to what goes on to see there was something about the way I treated horses that needed to change if I wanted to feel I was giving my best to my horse friends. I took a trip around the world to meet and film 6 people working on the leading edge of understanding horses. The Path of the Horse documentary, released in 2008, was the result that has sparked a new level of understanding and compassion throughout the horse world. For the most part, the audience up to this point has been horse owners looking for better ways to relate to their equine companions. They are grateful someone from within the industry has taken the time to show and question practices that seem harmful and hurtful to horses today. From many of these people, I hear that viewing the movie causes a sense of relief that somebody else is seeing the same things they have seen. The movie creates a new space in the minds of many viewers to be able to take a closer look at what we are really doing with horses and other areas of our life, through a perspective rarely seen before in movies, and never in a documentary made by a horse trainer. We get to follow the point of view of someone who was willing to give up what she thought was most dear about horses, riding, in the name of exploring what might lie beyond. Along the way, she uncovers keys to unlock the symbolism of horses and the horse-human relationship throughout time. With the release of the documentary, I saw the journey wasn't over. After I studied from each of these people, I felt I needed to step back out of the horse world for a period of time in order to get a different perspective. The horses and I spent hours together in a field. No halters, no bridles, no riding, nobody telling us how to be together. We found our own games and pleasures. I found in the end, just as we can never truly know the mind or body of another, we may never truly know if riding hurts horses. However, we can likely all agree that horseback riding, and all uses of horses for human sport, recreation, entertainment, or monetary gain, are an indulgence at this time that we can abstain from for a while, in order to join the exploration of what happens when we turn from practices which may exploit animals or the environment to those which heal us all. If we want to live in a clean, green world, we are the ones who need to create it. We're going to find the time by curbing our indulgences, whether they be horseback riding, television watching, internet gaming, travel, sports, shopping, family, movies, pets, or any number of other ways we spend our time, and using this time to reach out to our community, learning to help fellow humans by following our hearts. We are calling this experiment Our Horses. We will give up our indulgences of controlling horses, and a portion of other pastimes in exchange for time to get to know our neighbors and help care for the planet, including horses. We recognize that horses are a nation that has served us for thousands of years. They helped humans achieve amazing things. Now we're going to treat them as friends and honored guests. We're going to care for them. We are no longer asking them to serve us, to stand under us, to lend us their power, to lend us their wings. There's already a group of us who want to do this because we see it as needed. Whether or not we have been responsible for making our world the way it is today, we certainly are responsible for cleaning it up. Now that I've grown up some, I've found that there is something healing for a human to care for and heal a horse without asking anything in return. Maybe that's how I got healed. Part of taking care of horses means we need to spend a lot of time listening and create a world where horses and humans are valued simply because they're fellow beings sharing this lifetime on earth with us. In this world, they don't need to be young or pretty or fast or strong or rideable. In this world, we can take every last horse and give them all homes where they can lead happy, healthy lives. In this world, we humans can live peaceful lives alongside them and invite our friends to do the same. With 90,000 to 140,000 horses being sent to slaughter from the USA each year, we know there are a lot of captive-born and wild-caught horses who need homes where they are cared for and allowed to live out their lives in peaceful, natural surroundings, with friends and room to run. I hope you find this to be a magical book, a gift from another world. Let it sink in, as any good magic book will do. Only this magic book is about real life, the most dramatic play ever performed. Open the book whenever it comes to mind, and let the images and words guide your moment. I hope you're lucky enough to own a copy you can feel in your hands and smell the pages of. These copies will retain a sensory record of your readings, especially if you're bold enough to take notes and draw pictures in your book. Take your time with this book. There's no end to get to, only moments to take you to live in the new world in your mind. As you turn a page, a picture might appear or a story unfold. Watch for the words and images to leap off the pages and dance. That's when you know you've gotten into the new world. The placement of photographs and paintings as they appear in this book might be likened to a jazz rhythm. or a sequence of several separate stories to visit along this path, windows into a moment in time in one person's life. You might ask yourself, what was the photographer experiencing? What about the horses? What about the artist? What had she seen? What is she expressing or commenting on? I'll now turn you loose, knowing I've given you the best instructions I know how to give through a book. I hope to meet you again in the last chapter, and tell you more about who we are and just how we plan to save all the horses and humans. We're creating a new world from a horse's point of view. How do I want to be treated? Chapter 1. Primum non nocere. If riders took the Hippocratic oath required of physicians, the horse world as we know it today would immediately cease to exist. Primum non nocere. First, do no harm. The best-fitting saddle can only achieve one thing. It can evenly distribute the pressure of the rider and saddle on the horse's back. Horse magazines, veterinary journals, and riding manuals are filled with articles detailing how to rehabilitate horses from back injuries. But the best they can offer in regards to preventing the injuries is to suggest proper saddle fit and proper conditioning of the back muscles. The bigger problem is the amount of pressure itself. No matter how well it is distributed or how well the muscles are conditioned, evidence shows that after 10 to 15 minutes, the horse's back muscles will go numb. There's nothing benevolent about a bit. Even the best-fitted, mildest bit has only one function: to cause pain. Even the mildest bit has the capacity to be used to break a horse's jaw. This might seem to be a shocking statement at first glance, but that's only because we're used to operating under a collective illusion. Society tells us we're doing the best for our horses. We give them the best hay, supplements, hoof care, veterinary care. We spend thousands of dollars on the best-fitted saddles, perfectly designed bits, spurs of just the right length, and even whips with cute little hands on them to give the horse a gentle love pat when it's time to get going. It's like having an ergonomically correct electric chair, or spiked high heels with a tiny toe cushion. It looks absolutely absurd when we see the larger picture. When we're causing pain to another being for our own pleasure, we can never have the sort of relationship that we're fantasizing about. We have horses that go where we say, when we say, at the gait we specify. We consider them safe and bomb-proof, or perhaps they need an advanced rider, or are a little resistant. We think our horses love it when we spend hours on their backs, jumping obstacles, running around barrels, venturing out to the wide open spaces. All our training has done is to turn horses into puppets. When we pull the right rein, the head turns right. When we squeeze the barrel, the hind leg steps over. Is there any room to consider the horse's well-being or desires in this scenario? Of course, we tell ourselves, if the horse is injured or sick, I will get him the best care. I would never push him past his limits. I love him. Now let's take a look at this from a different perspective. If you knew without a doubt you were causing compromised circulation, leading to pain, numbness, and the destruction of muscle tissue in the horse's back, would you continue to ride? If you knew the use of bits and all traditional horse training methods, including the popular natural horsemanship, is based on negative reinforcement and positive punishment, would you be so sure your horse enjoys doing what he's told? What is your ultimate goal? Is it to win at a horse show? To have fun by going out on a trail ride with friends? There is no doubt a thrill associated with achieving these goals. History has shown us the best way to achieve these goals. It's called training. Training for these goals creates a victim, and that victim is the horse. If horse lovers are able to uncover what is at the root of their love for the horse, they might be surprised. They might discover that all the ribbons, the accolades, and the hours spent doing fun activities that compromise the well-being of the horse were not what originally drew her to horses. It is perhaps the most basic human desire we want to experience: love. Do you want to experience yourself as a kind and loving person, respectful of all life, a person who has true partnership with another being? Training will not get you these. To break through this illusion that we are doing the best for our horses, we must be willing to reevaluate everything we currently take for granted. We must be willing to see things as they are, and to call abuse, abuse, and torture, torture, rather than cloaking it in euphemisms such as schooling and correction. We get sucked into destructive practices simply because they seem to be the only ones out there. We lack alternative models, which in turn hinders us from seeing beyond new packaging designed to sell more of what we've seen in the past, while making us think it's different. In the next chapters, we will take a closer look at areas we must reevaluate if we humans are going to evolve in consciousness. We have the potential to evolve from beings that need to control every element of our external environment in order to feel safe, to ones who feel the connection between things, and who can feel safety even in the midst of turmoil, because they see a higher perspective. The first step is primum non nocere. First, do no harm. Chapter 2. Training Systems. Let's take some more steps to reevaluate what we're doing with horses. Right now, we need information to be able to decide whether we want to continue in a traditional way with horses, or to make the leap to a way that doesn't compromise the body or spirit of a horse. Let's focus on training systems. For over 20 years, my horse training livelihood has been based on starting young horses for competition and pleasure careers. In the beginning, I learned how to start horses from other trainers, from books, and plenty of experimentation. Even though it seems that there are hundreds of trainers and training systems out there, the fundamentals are the same in nearly all cases. Each might employ different exercises and tools to achieve the goals, but each system has a similar goal. In order to truly know a system, we must first strip it down and ask, how does the system motivate the horse to behave in certain ways? To proceed, it will help to know what operant conditioning is. Even if you've never heard the term before, if you've trained anything in your life, including a horse, child, dog, or dolphin, you probably used a form of operant conditioning. Operant conditioning is defined as the use of consequences to modify the occurrence and form of behavior. In operant conditioning, there are only 3 terms to consider. These are reinforcement, punishment, and extinction. Reinforcement is a consequence to an action that results in the action being performed with greater frequency. Punishment is a consequence to an action that results in the action being performed with less frequency. And extinction is no response to a behavior, which leads to the disappearance or suppression of a behavior. The terms positive and negative are added to clarify the procedures. In this context, positive, only refers to something being added, while negative refers to something being taken away. The four main possibilities in operant conditioning are positive reinforcement, abbreviated as R+, which is adding something desirable to make the behavior more likely to happen again. Negative reinforcement, abbreviated as R-, which is taking away something undesirable in order to make the behavior more likely to happen again. Positive punishment, abbreviated as P+, which is adding something undesirable in order to make the behavior less likely to happen again. And negative punishment, abbreviated as P-, which is taking away something desirable in order to make the behavior less likely to happen again. Now, to see these in action, I need only to give examples. An example of positive reinforcement is giving a child a treat after he has cleaned his room. An example of negative reinforcement would be grounding a child without privileges until he has cleaned his room. An example of positive punishment is hitting a child when he has spilled his milk. An example of negative punishment is taking away a child's toy if he's not sharing it nicely with others. In the horse world, these examples might look like the following. Positive reinforcement is giving a horse a carrot after she has come to the gate. Negative reinforcement is pulling on the right rein until the horse turns her head right, and then releasing it. Positive punishment would be whipping a horse when she refuses a jump. Negative punishment would be not giving a horse grain after she was naughty during a ride. Now that we're more familiar with operant conditioning, we can return to the question, what is the horse's motivation? If we extrapolate from these examples, those of us who have spent some time trying out different training systems can see that, stripped to their essentials, the horse's motivation in most equine training systems is the avoidance or minimization of pain. Most systems rely heavily on negative reinforcement and positive punishment to motivate a horse to perform the behaviors we desire. The one exception I can think of is clicker training, which focuses on positive reinforcement to create the desired behaviors. If you're a rider, think of your favorite trainer. If you want your horse to go forward, what's the first thing you're taught to do? Probably squeeze with your legs. If that doesn't work, kick. If that doesn't work, kick harder. If that doesn't work, whip or spur the horse. And what are these examples of? Negative reinforcement. The horse's reward is that the discomfort or pain caused by the rider will hopefully stop when she goes forward. And what have you been taught to do when your horse refuses to go in a stall, in a trailer, or across a stream? Probably some combination of pulling on the halter or bridle, kicking, hitting, whipping, or spurring. What are all these examples of? Positive punishment. Now, if you're a rider who has never trained your own horse, and you have been blessed with a horse who seems to get with the program, and to cheerfully do what you request, then with all likelihood you haven't gone into any deep questioning of your methods. You found something that works and you stick with it. The difference between a horse who is considered trained and one who is green or difficult is that the first horse is at a stage where the rider can use refined and very subtle cues. Perhaps a simple nudge or shift of weight is all it takes to make the horse stop, go, or turn. The green or difficult horses are ones who are either unsure of what response will bring the least amount of pain, or they're resisting due to physical pain or fear that causes them to tolerate the blows from a whip, heels, spurs, or bit, rather than with the intolerable pain of their own movements or the fear of what they're being asked to do. Over the years I was sent many horses that needed to be tuned up. These were horses that were typically well behaved for the new owner for the first month or so, and then they started to have problems. In the past, I would explain it to the owner using gentle phrases like, "The horse has learned he can get away with that," or, "You can't expect the horse to maintain his level of training without some professional help." Sounds logical, right? What did that mean in plain English? Either your timing is off or your cues have become too soft, and the horse needs to be reminded about what the painful consequences are if he doesn't respond to a light signal. Some trainers are better than others at telling it like it is, and they have no qualms about drawing blood with their corrections if the horse isn't getting it. Others, like me, would half-heartedly make corrections, constantly questioning myself about the methods, particularly with horses who seem to need a heavy hand. It's hard to be successful in the business with this type of questioning always going on, always stopping the whip or tug on the rein before it reaches its full force. This is what gave me the reputation of being a gentle horse trainer. During my most intensive period of questioning over a year and a half, I questioned my own motivation. Why did I want to be with horses? The most fundamental answer always has been to experience true communication and partnership with horses. Looking back from my current perspective, it seems distorted that I could consider I would have a true partnership if I could only control a horse through pain or threats of pain. To be honest, that was most of what I had been taught to do with them. True, I was good enough that the cues could be refined down to mere nudges and shifts of weight, and even bitless and bridleless riding, but the consequences of the horse disobeying would always be to escalate the pain again until the horse decided it was better to respond to a light cue. Secondary and tertiary motivations crept in over the years. I wanted to make a living with horses. I wanted to win at competitions. Somehow I figured these would all fit together nicely with my primary motivation of experiencing a true partnership with horses. That assumption couldn't have been further from the truth I found. During the time I spent working on the Path of the Horse documentary, I gave up all of my motivations except the most fundamental one, the one that initially drew me to horses. I could no longer fool myself. I didn't have the partnerships I wanted, so I set out to find people who looked like they did, and to learn from them. The person I found who seemed to have it all was Alexander Nevzorov. But it wasn't good enough for me to simply see his videos and read his articles. I needed to meet him, to watch his students in Russia, and to find out for myself if this was just a more subtle form of physical control, or if he did indeed have a true connection with his horses, without it being the result of pain-inducing methods. It felt like an initiation into a new world, to be asked to give up bits, competitions, and ultimately all forms of controlling the horse's head, and the styles and pleasures of riding that I had known, in order to work with Alexander through his free online school. At the time, I couldn't conceive of why a horse would want to do anything with me if I was stripped of all my tools for manipulation. But there he stood, Alexander Nevzorov, with his horses leaping around him like overjoyed puppies. What sort of training system is this? With no common spoken language, And yet there's also no force, pain, or threats of pain? Where did it fit in the operant conditioning model? It seemed to go beyond even positive reinforcement and clicker training. It actually seemed like the horses had learned to do movements that made them bigger, more free, and proud of their own accord. What ways had this man found to bring that out in a horse? His method is deceptively simple. A person is never allowed to harm a horse, especially for their own pleasures, and a person must study the physiology and responses of a horse minutely so that she can be sure that she is never harming a horse. After that, it's a matter of spending time together, first developing games, and ultimately a two-way communication system between horse and human that is much stronger than any pain-induced training. As I started to study the horse's anatomical, physiological, and myological systems, I was startled to find that commonly accepted practices, such as the use of bits, shoes, and even the pressure of a rider, all have negative effects on a horse's well-being. The results of some of these studies will be detailed in the following chapter. I had found the way to develop a true partnership with a horse, and it isn't a training system at all. It's a way to develop two-way communication. The human steps into the role of educator. It is the human who learns how to develop and to bring out the horse's innate talents. What's the horse's motivation? To play, run, leap, rear, have fun, as well as to work on more disciplined elements, to build strength and flexibility, and to do it all with a human who understands her and will protect her, having only her best interests in mind. Truly, this is the future of horse-human relationships, for those of us who recognize the authentic spirit of a horse. Chapter 3. The Truth About Backs, Language, and Who We Really Are. With all the talk in natural horsemanship circles about learning the horse's language, this aim can never be achieved when it is distorted to support the questionable premise that a horse enjoys being ridden. In my studies and experiences, I've come to the conclusion that horses are the ones who have learned our language far better and more honestly than we can imagine. It's time to reevaluate what is enjoyable for a horse from less of an egocentric agenda. New Agey books and teachers talk about how horses are our mirrors. I'm not talking about horses understanding our spoken language to any great extent, but they are masters at understanding the language we seem to have forgotten, the language of our actions. As a veteran horse trainer, one of the things that most surprised me to learn was the science of what goes on in a horse's back when it's subjected to a saddle and rider. Sure, I knew horses occasionally got sore backs and needed treatment or a better fitting saddle, but I certainly didn't understand what goes on each and every time a horse takes someone for a ride. One reason that some of this information might seem to be new is because it wasn't until around 1992 that the SaddleTech saddle pressure testing pad was developed. These pads, and other similar devices more recently developed, include sensitive sensors that can measure the amount of pressure between horse and saddle. These pressure-sensing technologies led to a flurry of interesting scientific studies in the equine world. When this information was combined with other studies of mammalian muscle tissue, it all suddenly pointed to a huge dilemma. We were causing problems for the horses. In the Journal of Veterinary Science, Volume 14, Number 11, 1994, well-known veterinarian and saddle fit expert Dr. Joyce Harmon reported the results of using a study using the SaddleTech pad. She wrote, "For the purposes of this study, saddles with pressures of up to 1.93 psi were graded an excellent fit. Between 2.0 and 3.38 psi, without persistent pressure points, were graded fair, and saddles that exceeded 3.4 psi or had persistent pressure points throughout the session were graded poor. These numbers were derived from preliminary data indicating that it was difficult to find an English saddle with pressures below 0.75 psi, which is the highest pressure found in the capillary bed. Pressures that exceed 0.75 psi will close down the blood flow in the arterial capillary bed." End quote. What does it mean if the blood flow is shut down? This is what happens on a small scale when we press on our skin and it turns white, or if we sit in an awkward position for a longer amount of time and we experience our leg or arm going to sleep. Author Mary Wanless writes in her book For the Good of the Horse, quote, "Perhaps one of the horse's saving graces is that squeezing the blood out of his tissues causes pain for the first 10 to 15 minutes of a ride, and then his back goes numb." End quote. So, until we learn how to levitate saddles, even a saddle with an excellent fit, with the best air, foam, or wool-stuffed panels, and an average weight rider, will have pressures which are more than twice what it takes to shut down the blood flow within the muscles. Dr. Harmon goes on to state that in studies of canine and human muscles, sustained pressure of just 0.68 psi for over 2 hours causes significant tissue damage. It is important to note that the SaddleTech sensor pad used in these first studies used sensors developed to evaluate the risks of pressure sores in bedridden humans, and only measured pressures of up to 4 psi. More modern sensor pads, such as the FSA, Force Sensing Array system, developed by Vision Engineering Group, VERG Incorporated, of Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, can record much higher pressures. In one test involving Western saddles with high-priced pads, average peak pressures measured between 8.25 and 14 psi. Wesley E.D., McCullough E., Eccles S., Davis E., article number 9329, 2007, The Horse Magazine. Pressure sensing pads also have the limitations of only recording pressures at the level of the skin. Saddle pressure is transferred through the muscles to the bony structures underneath, the vertebrae and ribs, and if we could measure the pressure there, it would be significantly greater. Dr. Harmon writes, quote, "There is surgical evidence in human medicine that subcutaneous necrosis, the death of cells, begins closer to the bone before cutaneous redness and ulceration is seen." End quote. This means if we've been around horses long enough to notice white spots or tender swellings in the saddle area, we are only witnessing the end results of a long process of tissue destruction. The longissimus dorsi and trapezius muscles that a rider sits on have been developing since the dawn of the horse, when Eohippus first used them to facilitate movement. Their structure was never created to bear weight in the form of vertical pressure from above, and this remains true even after centuries of selective breeding for riding horses. Other effects of weight on the horse's back include extension or hollowing of the back, which, quote, may contribute to soft tissue injuries and kissing spine syndrome, end quote. De Kock, P. et al., Effects of Girth, Saddle, and Weight on Movements of the Horse, Equine Veterinary Journal 36, 2004, pages 758 through 763. Briefly, kissing spine syndrome is when the spinous processes of the vertebrae, the long bony protrusions of the vertebrae which form the structure of the withers and the top line of the back, start to touch each other and will eventually remodel themselves and fuse together in severe cases. Quote, "This condition is clinically significant in jumpers, but occurs in all types of horses." End quote. Marks, D. Medical Management of Back Pain, Vet Clinics of North America, Equine Practice, Volume 15, No. 1, 1999. Quote, "Kissing spines, or impingement of the dorsal spinous processes, occur due to repetitive undulations in jumping horses, basculing or rounding over a vertical fence, overextending upon landing, or stretching out and hollowing the back over a wide oxer jump can cause this problem. The result is that the individual spinous projections are pushed together tightly. This generally occurs from the end of the withers to the beginning of the loin, the 10th through the 18th thoracic vertebrae." End quote. Nadeau, J. Preventing Back Pain in Horses, University of Connecticut, Department of Animal Science Fact Sheet, 2006. There are a plethora of similarly significant traumas to the back, which are either a direct result of the rider on the back or the indirect result of what the rider asks the horse to do, sliding stops, jumps, etc. Some examples are spondylosis, jumper's bump, sacroiliac joint injury, supraspinous ligament injury, dorsal ligament tears, stress fractures of the ilium, and lumbosacral joint injury, to name a few. I hope the reader is starting to get a sense of the risks we subject the horse to with what we consider to be a normal use of the horse. Let's go back now to the first trauma that happens when the horse is saddled: compromised blood flow, ischemia, in the muscles. It is true that muscles have wonderful regenerative properties, and many times pressure sores can heal if infection is avoided and the horse is receiving proper nutrition and time off from more pressure. However, shouldn't we be concerned about the physiological effects of the pain that was involved in the process and the likelihood of re-injury? We're all familiar with the sharp pains associated with sensation coming back into a limb that has fallen asleep or gone numb due to compromised blood supply. But who has experienced the pain of developing pressure sores, even mild ones which itch and hurt even before there are any outwardly visible signs? It is exactly this discomfort that causes us to shift position every few minutes when we're sitting or standing. If we didn't, we would develop pressure sores, also called bed sores, just from the weight of our own bodies on a soft chair or bed. In my research for this chapter, I was surprised to find that actor Christopher Reeve, originally injured in a riding accident, ultimately died at age 52 as a result of complications from a pressure sore. A horse, when saddled, has no chance to shift his weight to relieve the discomfort. He probably tries to tell us in other ways, like fidgeting, exhibiting a shortened gait, ears back, swishing tail, trying to rub on the rail, or bucking. These should all be considered signs of a perfectly honest horse trying to relieve pain. The horse who is more dangerous to herself is one who quietly goes on with her work, knowing that the consequences of showing any signs of back pain will be a stronger pain in the mouth, head, ribs, or flanks, probably combined with a longer session under saddle. Horses are masters at learning how to get along, and most will quickly discover exactly what it takes to survive. A numb back is probably much easier to tolerate than the other ways humans have devised to control horses. When we subject our horses to these pains for our own pleasures, we are breaching something fundamental in our relationship. The fact that many horses tolerate these traumas speaks more about their innate ways of coping with confinement, fear, and pain, rather than any proof of our right to sit on a horse's back, or their enjoyment of this process. I hope what I have presented makes it clear that any time we sit on a horse for more than a moment, without understanding what's going on underneath us, we are compromising the horse's well-being. There are two ways we can be sure we do not injure a horse. The first is to turn the horse out in a large field and wish her well in a natural herd. And the second is to study the horse's systems so minutely that we can say with authority what we're doing is not harmful. Now that the problem with riding has been detailed, let's look at possible solutions. First, we must understand why we want to ride a horse. If the answers include, it's fun, I want to compete, or it's good exercise, then the previous information will have little or no impact on what you do, and the current horse world will give you plenty of support in pursuing your goals. If your answers sound more like, I love horses, or I want to learn how to have a good relationship with my horse, or even, I think horses might have something to teach me, then it's likely you've already started to look for alternatives to the traditional horse world. The solution has to begin with the premise that the horse knows her own mind, and in any matter regarding her behavior, she is the authority. Horses don't have a spoken language we can understand, but they do have a language we can learn. It is a language of physiology and movement. Once we spend enough time letting go of what we think we know about horses, we leave space for what is to reveal itself. For example, if a horse starts bucking under saddle, we might think, or have been taught, that it was due to her being naughty, as if the bucking were comparable to a young child beating up on a schoolmate. Or maybe we think she's getting too much grain, too much alfalfa, or it's too cold, too windy, or any number of countless guesses. On the other hand, if we start with the premise that the horse has a perfectly good reason for bucking, and it's our job to determine what that is, she will begin leading us on a path. It's a bit like seeing the horse as a living language course. Of course, the horse is the master of this language, and we are the pupils, learning to decipher her movements and attitudes. Horses see us for who we truly are, behind our masks of words and hidden meanings. They sense what we try to hide from ourselves and other humans, our frustrations, irritations, dissatisfaction, aggravations, and at the base of it, our fears. In what other area is it socially acceptable to beat an animal? Where it's even televised, and the sport's greatest heroes are ones who carry whips in their hands and strap spurs to their heels, showing their mastery by how invisible they can make these aids. The horse learns this language of ours and our capabilities for causing her pain so well that in the hands of an expert, the threat of these devices is sufficient, and the devices themselves no longer need to be used. In order to start to understand the horse's language, and in the process of relearning our own natural language, we must begin with a horse we are not inflicting any pain on. Otherwise, all we are learning is about how to control the actions of a horse in pain. Truthfully, this makes up the bulk of information that's been studied for the thousands of years we've been riding horses. It's hard for the typical rider to understand that a real relationship with a horse must begin on the ground, with no halters, ropes, or small confined spaces. J. Allen Boone's sentiment about dogs in the book a kinship with all life, applies equally to horses. Quote, "There's facts about dogs, and there's opinions about them. The dogs have the facts, and the humans have the opinions. If you want facts about a dog, always get them straight from the dog. If you want opinions, get them from the human." End quote. As a person progresses in her understanding of horse language, with its syntax of anatomy, physiology, and psychology, there may come a time when it is appropriate to get on a horse's back. Just as signposts point the way to a destination, I can give a hint about some of the elements that will need to be understood by the person who has endeavored to learn enough of the horse's language to get to a point where being astride might be a helpful step in her lessons. As a human endeavors to learn the way a horse's body is designed, the way certain muscles, tendons, and ligaments work in concert with the skeletal structure, and the capacities and limits of these physiological elements, he will learn ways to play with the horse that lead to more freedom and balance for the horse. In the same way that yoga can help balance our own bodies and spirits, the person will learn the yoga which balances and frees a horse, to enable her to greater expression. The next signpost is when the person learns how to work with a horse with greater discipline, when both human and horse apply themselves to specific elements to develop the physiology of the horse and the mental focus and concentration of both horse and human. Around this time, another signpost you might notice is that the personal desire of the human to ride the horse will have naturally dropped away. A person at this level of understanding would have no more wish to bridle and saddle her equine teacher than she would to bridle and saddle her best human friend and prod her along a nice trail ride. If you're at the beginning of this journey and can't quite understand yet how a person could have a fulfilling relationship with a horse without riding, maybe it would be helpful to have a little carrot hung out to tempt you. When a human has learned the horse's language well enough that she begins to dance with her equine partner, she collects and balances him not as the end result of pulling, tugging, and restraining, but as the result of speaking a common language, never causing pain at any point along the path. She simply learns how to dance with his movements as a partner. Only then will the horse's anatomy reveal that he may indeed carry a human as part of the dance, on a strengthened spine that has not been weakened by hours of a rider pounding on the saddle, with muscles that are free from painful pressure sores, carried in a flexed and contracted state, which leads to higher blood pressure within the muscle, and the ability of this muscle to endure the pressure from a vertical load for a few minutes at a time. This is not something I call riding. It's something you'll read about more in the chapter about training secrets. In the final analysis, when we follow this path, we will experience the gift the horses have been holding for us. They can help us relearn our own ancient language and to live harmoniously with ourselves and the other residents of this planet. I hope in the following chapters to be able to find the right words to express the fullness of what I'm starting to experience. But perhaps I'll have to be content with pointing out signposts. To hear the rest of the story, please support us at ourhorses.org, OURHORSES.org.